School expelled me for mom's anger. We sued the county and caused a reform. Posted by W. Fogel 97. So I have a really bad leg. I've had 13 surgeries, long story, and it just started at a new school. After the first 3 weeks, I had to go in for another procedure on my leg. Not that big deal to me, I've been here before. Upon my return, I had documentation of my restrictions, as well as special amenities that were required. The big three were that I needed extra time to get from class to class, must have someone escort me, and needed unrestricted access to the elevator. All of these got me recurring problems such as constant harassment by my teachers and security about my being in the halls during class time, and why my cousin was out too, and he was filling the role of the escort as I have anxiety problems and we had the same classes. These first two were annoying but easy enough to deal with. The real issue was the elevator, as I was told multiple times that for security issues I couldn't have a personal key due to it sharing the same functionality with the interior door keys. I would have never had any issues with this, as I was told there would always be someone on the same floor as my classes to open the elevator for me. This, of course, was untrue about 75% of the time. The lack of elevator access meant that I was always stuck in the halls when other students were going class to class and was consistently late due to having to wait for someone to come by and open the door for the elevator. This also meant that I would sometimes be stuck waiting through the entire lunch period, and due to my absences, couldn't afford to simply go to lunch after the fact. After about 3 weeks of this, I was tired of not getting to eat lunch, so I did one of the stupidest things I could have attempted and tried to use the stairs. For context, I was not on crutches, I was on a full-blown walker. About halfway down to the landing, I fell hard. As lunch was letting out, one of my friends found me, got someone to help pick me up, and carried me to the office. Another of my friends went to find my other cousin. The one who normally escorted me wasn't there due to being sick, so I was without escort because I couldn't bear the thought of a stranger escorting me, who, when getting to the office, managed to get me to calm down enough to give them my mother's number. Now, my mother is quite hot-tempered, but can keep a level head normally. When she heard I fell, she was there in record time. When she got there, she immediately asked what happened. I told her I didn't want to miss lunch again, so I tried to use the stairs. Big mistake, as that set off a Tsar Bomba-sized explosive. She immediately turned around and demanded for the principal and the VP to get their butts here ASAP. As soon as the principal and VP walked in, she started berating them in a fashion not suitable for most adults to hear, let alone kids. When the VP made an offhand remark about my condition, my mother was swarmed by local sheriffs that provided security for the school's entrances and office as she physically went after the VP. We were escorted out, and after looking at the file and realizing my cousin and I had the same address, they figured out that I didn't actually live there. Now, my grandmother's address was listed as she looked after me after I left school up until around 8 p.m. She was also raising my cousin after an issue between her and my aunt. They used this as grounds to expel me and told her I can be some other school's problem now. I was then enrolled at the school near my house and had to have yet another surgery to repair the damage that was done as a result of my fall and redo the work of the previous procedure. I had gotten multiple statements from my teachers as well as my doctors, and my parents were moving forward with a lawsuit naming the VP, principal, and the county school board. We were contacted by a lawyer who had won multiple cases against our school board, some of which went to the state Supreme Court, and he told us that he would take our case pro bono. He was getting tired of going up against the board and thought a case like this would be what it took to try and fix their crap. Fast forward 9 months, and I was walking out of court with a settlement to cover all my procedures, as well as a written confirmation that the school would be going through a complete administrative overhaul, and that the principal and VP would be let go and have their administrative credentials revoked in our state. My new school was let known day one of my medical requirements and my need for a personal elevator key by the superintendent and the head of the State Board of Education. Long story short, my school majorly messed up with the handling of my medical requirements, resulting in a lawsuit that cost the head administrators their jobs, as well as a full-blown, county-wide investigation of disability procedures. As the great Ron Burgundy says, well, that escalated quickly. The justice and fallout in this story is insane. This story is called My Boss Thought She Could Insult Everyone, so I made her pay everyone for going on vacations. Posted by Miss Plantasia. Last year, I took a summer job for a kids camp. It seemed to be quite well paid, and I wanted to try to see how working with kids goes. The hiring process was a little odd, as for the interview, I was just called unexpectedly, and that woman, which was later my boss, spoke on the phone for about 2.5 hours or more and asked some really weird personal questions. For example, she asked, "You aren't a COVIDiot, are you?" Remember that, it will be a factor in the story. Anyway, I needed the money and it was the only callback I'd gotten so far, so I took it. She then made us all come in 2 times before starting the job so that she can explain it to us. Both times it went on the whole frickin' day without being included in our payments because it was not mandatory. I got to be the boss of my team. Then the first day came around and we faced 20 or more children with their parents. But the boxes with the name list, the toys and everything weren't there. We basically improvised and wrote their names as they came and hoped that they are indeed signed up. Later, the boxes arrived, but the contents were measly at best. She had given us 2 kinds of games, Uno and something else, bought it like 3 times. We got little instruments for the kids to decorate, but when she came around to check on us a few days later, she screamed at us. The freaking kids shouldn't have been allowed to take the instruments home, which she never said and made no sense. The next few days went on like this. She came around and screamed at us for doing something that made sense to every one of us and pretending that she had instructed us otherwise at the unpaid, non-mandatory orientation meeting, which I attended every time. She just talked about her personal life, no instructions. She went on and offended every single person in existence. She doesn't want to have lactose intolerant or handicapped kids in the camp because they're too much of a hassle. My Muslim colleague got scolded for wanting to go home to her toddler after a 10-hour shift, and she asked her in front of everyone if her son still breastfeeds in a crude way, because she doesn't have any reason to go home. Parents with questions or complaints are to be educated like kids because they behave like that when they didn't get screwed by their wife the night before. Also, she made us work more than 12 hours without a break and crapped on me when I stood up and went home at 12 hours worked. We have a law that requires that here. But 2 events stood out when she went after the kids. On the first occasion, you have to remember that this woman has an unhealthy obsession with Corona. She not only changed the rules of everything anytime it fit her narrative. With us, she also did that with the parents, which led to misunderstandings every single day. So she asked the children, aged 4 to 10, which one had done an antigen test and who had a PCR test. Of course, the children didn't all know what this is, and a little 5-year-old girl raised her hand for the false one. When my boss noticed that, she gave this poor girl the scolding of her life and told her that she is dumb as a rock for not knowing the difference. Pretty sure this girl had spit in her face. I was so in shock, I probably should have slapped her for that, but I didn't. The girl tried hard to not cry and didn't come back the days after. The second incident was even more disturbing. A 4-year-old boy hit his head at the playground when they were all outside. I was back in the office when my colleagues came running. I called the boss while my colleague called the ambulance. When I told her that and how my colleague was already on the phone with the ambulance, she scolded me. But not because that boy got hurt, no, because we called the ambulance. In her world, it wasn't that bad, and the father shouldn't find out, as if he was blind and wouldn't have seen the open wound anyway. The ambulance came and told us it was completely fine, even mandatory to call them in this case as an institution, and the boy suffered no further injury. He is fine now, thankfully. But I was furious. I was completely freaking out of anger. I'd only worked there for 9 days, and the kids as well as us had been abused enough. Instead of going after my impulse to call her back and tell her off, I calmed myself, and the next day, I didn't go to work, but to the doctor. I explained to her that my boss abuses me, but I can't terminate the contract early, so to keep me from snapping, she put me on a sick leave without end date. My boss was not amused when I sent her that doctor's notice, but I ignored her calls. I then proceeded to talk with my teammates and encouraged them to get sick leave and told them exactly what they can do and say to get that. They even tried to get rid of my Muslim coworker illegally. I explained to her that the paperwork from them is not legal and she should ignore it and also go on sick leave. So, in about a 2-week frame, my location had to replace all 6 people, including me, the boss there. And I took all the records home too, so she couldn't just pass them on, and also changed the password to my email account and did everything to tick her off. The story doesn't end here. As I found out, the word spread like wildfire, and because she was such a piece of crap to everyone at every location, 1 month after the start, she lost more than half of her staff. Some of them still had to be paid sick leave. Apparently, she called some of them and begged them to come back and offered bonuses as high as double the pay and still got nobody to come back to help. The silver lining was that the parents also had enough and many kids were taken out of that camp. So the end of July was here. I was on sick leave and she calls. She proceeds to tell me, suspiciously calm, that if I don't want to come back next month, I should tell her now, please, and she offered to end my contract without further obligations and with my payment for the whole month of July. I tell her about how I'm coming back because I really want to get better and other bullcrap. And of course, I just didn't, and I proceeded to collect 1 additional full month of sick leave without ever even speaking to her directly again. I also went out of my way to continue offering information for every single staff member of all locations that wanted to leave and still get paid or wanted to know where they can report her. So in the end, this is what she got for being a disrespectful witch. She lost half or more of her workers. Everyone hates her and wants nothing to do with her, really bad publicity included. She had to pay me the full 2 months, my vacation time out in money, which is quite expensive for them, as I didn't take it because I was so sick. Pay my overtime and the mandatory bonus you get for doing extra hours. All of this multiplied by 6 at least. I got around $6,000 for 9 days of work from them. Her entire enterprise went downhill. And of course, I also had to get my money through legal support, so that came on to her too. I can't explain how much detail I put in the legal planning, so to get all the people paid out as much as possible without any chance of legal repercussions ever. My butt is safer than safe. She will not ever be able to retaliate on what I did there. I studied law for a while and got everything double-checked by professionals. She tried to harass me, and I blocked her. But I heard she read my personal information to the other colleagues who stayed there and called me all possible names. So, if she should ever even try to sue me or blackmail me, I have evidence and witnesses for trying to dox me, insulting me, and various other things. Honestly, after I wrote that down now, I'm kinda proud, but also surprised at how nicely all of that worked out. I didn't see any listings searching for that project this year, so hopefully that went downhill, and I hope that she went back to heck where she came from, or became unemployed. Insane fraud and terrible neighbors today. Our first story is called, "Was Bored at Work, So Got a Guy Fired and Possibly Sent to Prison for Fraud," posted by Bored Hotel Worker. I work the night shift as a receptionist at a hotel in Norway, and most nights are spent watching Netflix and playing games. Last summer was really slow, and I also worked a lot extra, so I ran out of stuff to watch and of games to play. One night, I got a mail from Scooter. He wanted to book a room for almost 20 days. I just had to send him the price and the confirmation that we had the rooms available, and then he would send me his credit card info for me to pre-charge. Normally, we just delete these kinds of mail, but I was bored out of my mind, so I responded with an offer for around $2,000 for the entire stay. I also made sure to inform him that he could cancel for free up to the day of the arrival. This is probably the most common fraud attempt in hotels and travel industry. Unlike most businesses, we are able to charge credit and debit cards with only the card number and expiration date. No need for a PIN code, a CVC, or other authorization methods. Our software also allows us to deposit money directly to local and international bank accounts by using the card number. Because of this, jerks like Scooter will try to prepay with stolen and skimmed cards, but then cancel the booking and ask us to refund the amount to a different card. A couple hours after sending him the offer, he responded with a Visa number and told me to charge him as soon as possible. I checked the card with our validation software, and to my big surprise, it did not belong to Scooter. If validation succeeds, it will return with the card owner's name 90% of the time. I sent him a new mail stating that the card was declined because of insufficient funds. He quickly replied and gave me a new card to try. Guess what? This one didn't belong to Scooter either. Wasn't even the same person as the first card. By checking the BIN codes, the 6 first digits, I found which banks had issued the cards, not even issued in the same country. My plan was just to call the banks and inform them of the attempted scam, but there were still several hours before I could go home, so I decided to screw with Scooter a bit more. I sent him a reply that the second card went through and also the reference number for his stay at our hotel. As expected, a couple hours later, Scooter sent a mail canceling the order and asked if we could refund the money to a different card, as he had lost his wallet and deactivated the card that he paid with. This card was issued from a Polish bank. Not sure why, but Polish bank accounts are often used by people who want to launder money from Bitcoin and drugs. You can buy a legit card for around $500 that is registered to some guy or girl in Poland from the darknet. At this point, Scooter was probably pretty happy about the $2K he would soon receive. I replied that it was no problem for me to transfer the dollars to a different card, as long as it was valid. How fun it would be to also cancel his own card so that he had to spend $500 for a new one. Not fun enough. In the last mail, I wrote that he could send me the card number, but that our email server would go down for maintenance in a few minutes, so my boss would do it on Monday. It was now Saturday morning, so enough time for the charged bank to call us and reverse the transfer. If he needed the money right away, I told him to call the hotel before I ended my shift at 7 o'clock. He called almost immediately, and I wrote down the card number and his phone number. Told him that I transferred the money and that it would be in his account by 12 o'clock. My shift ended, and I went home with all the info that Scooter had provided. Wanted to see if I could find out who he was, and of course, this idiot had an open Facebook profile that I found using his phone number. He even listed his address and employer. Looked a bit like the artist Scooter, but even with more screwed up face and spiky hair full of gel. He lives somewhere outside of London in an area that I would describe as a British trailer park. Houses that were nice at some point, but where the owners had spent no money on maintenance since it was built. Trash everywhere and broken windows that were boarded up or fixed by sealing holes with garbage. Now to the fun part. According to his Facebook profile, Scooter worked at a hotel. This meant that he would have access to card information from guests that book through sites like Booking.com. I called the manager of the hotel and I told him there was reason to believe that one of his employees was trying to commit credit card fraud and that the card's numbers could belong to their guest. I gave him the name of the people who owned the cards that Scooter tried to pay with, and to no surprise, both had stayed at the hotel. I told him it was Scooter, and the manager just exploded in anger. Not 100% sure what he said because he was screaming so loud, but I think Scooter wasn't a normal employee. He worked there through some kind of government training program or something. After talking to the manager, I called both Visa and MasterCard International and told them about Scooter's little business venture. Apparently, it's pretty easy to check if there are more cards that have been involved in fraud, where the cards also have been used at Hotel Scooter. With his Polish deposit account info, they would also be able to pin it on Scooter if he had been successful in scamming anyone and then sue him for the amount stolen. The police also called me later to get a statement regarding the whole situation, so I know that the manager reported it to the police. Not sure what happened to Scooter, but according to his Facebook profile, he no longer works at the hotel or anywhere else as far as I can see. Psycho Karen neighbor destroys property and files a false police report with an update. Click the video on your screen to find out what happens to Karen, and I'll see you there.